themselves. So if I meet anybody, I've got. I don't really advertise it. It's just something that's there if it's needed.
Do they?
People who like cannabis, it's fine. I don't really smoke it, so I try and do it in other ways. I try and just stay healthy in other ways.
And in fact, the whole thing about CBDs is cannabis without the THC, which is the component that makes people high. But to tell you the truth, for me, I've been smoking since I was 20, almost 40 years, with a 13-year gap in the middle because I was gainfully employed and drug tested. But I don't get high, so to speak, very often. What I do get is I get dampened so that my high frequencies are lowered and my low frequencies are elevated. And so I'm more at an even pace, whereas if I haven't smoked, then I'm sort of rough and sharp.
Yeah, years ago, about 15 years ago, I used to work for a guy who was growing in an attic, like on a mansion on a hill. None of it was legal. But he was employing me as an astrologer at the time, so I didn't care. And then I was balancing the pH on the weed in the attic when he asked me to.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't there. But the whole place got shut down because it was weird. Like, it's not legal. It was way too early. The police got in. And I left. And then about 3 months later, I found out it had been shut down. But it was obvious that something was going on in there because it was like we were cleaning up hemp plants in the conservatory at one point. It was like there's an enormous amount of hemp in this conservatory. It was obvious something was going on.
Yep. We got 30 seconds. Let's continue this conversation on marijuana if Bridgette doesn't come in on time.
Yeah, she didn't come in time last week, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to let you guys talk.
All right.
All right, yeah, I'm happy to talk. I don't mind.
Well, I'll give the intro, put on the bumper music, and then we'll see.
Okay, cool.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is Dr. Lenny Thyme, and you're listening to The New Way on Steampunk Radio, which you can find on your TuneIn app. We're going to start off this morning by asking everybody to come into our world. That was Kindly Minogue and Come Into My World. That's one of the better videos that's ever been made because she dances around on a street, walks by the same shop, comes out the door, and continues on the circuit. And so by the end of the song, you've got 4 or 5 Kylies walking around the circuit through the same events in time, and it really throws your mind for a loop until you start thinking about the Mandela effect. And then when you're thinking about that, you go back and you smoke your marijuana and you get really, really stoned, and suddenly you're in Kylie's world, which isn't too bad a deal. Now, I've been smoking marijuana for 40 some years, but I took a 13-year break in the interim to actually go out in the workplace where I didn't smoke at all. And I'm one of the people who marijuana affects differently. Instead of getting me stoned and high, what it does is it dampens my vibrations. So when I'm at the peak of vibration, I tend to be sharp. But if I've smoked, then my variability doesn't get as high on the sharp spikes and doesn't get as low on the bottom spikes. And so I feel I can use it as a healing agent. The medical profession has identified an endocannabinoid system within our bodies, which uses THC and CBDs and other elements as receptors. And so if the body is set up to take these sort of things and dampen vibrations, do we really need pharmaceutical drugs for healing? It's a question that I have, and I don't have a resolve because I'm not really fond of any industry that makes its profit off of the backs of the individual people. Now that I've gone on my little diatribe for marijuana, I have a guest from Great Britain, Dennis, and he's into Reishi healing or Reiki healing. And since I don't know much about the topic, I'd like to ask you to mic in, Dennis, and explain to us what Reiki healing is and how you got involved in the practice.
Oh, thanks, Ernie. Yeah, Reiki. A long time ago, 20 years ago, I got involved. And I was working in the city of London at Reuters. I had 20 staff at the time. I was very, very stressed. And I was looking for ways to de-stress, basically, from the effects of the job. One of the things I looked at was Buddhist meditation, and the next thing that I looked at was Reiki. Now, Reiki is a Japanese energy channeling technique, for want of a better phrase. It's a hands-on healing technique and also a distance healing technique. It's passed on from teacher to student, so it's very, very traditional in that kind of way. But it's passed on in a ritual where you do particular things in certain chakras and add like receptors, for want of a better phrase, to the chakras that then allows the student to channel the energy that the master's channel. Does that make sense or not?
It does in some ways. The term chakras, what exactly are chakras?
Chakras it's like an energy wheel. It's like an energy vortex. As in the way that I use this, it's like the 7 energy vortices in your energy system, in your aura. All of these words are not particularly useful, but it's the only way we can describe things, so I've got to use them. So you've got an energy center on the crown of your head, another one in your third eye, the center of your forehead, there's one by your throat, heart, and then solar plexus, sacral area, which is your belly, and then your genital area. And all of these things are processing energy. It's the way the energy is processed in the human energy field. So you don't need to worry about the word too much. It just means wheel, basically. It means like it's a circular vortex.
Okay.
All it's doing is moving energy through your system. So it's the equivalent, really. When I say chakras, just think endocrine system, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because that's what they're the equivalent of. They're the equivalent of your endocrine system, and they're producing hormones. And the way that Reiki works, and the way that I use it, is it's balancing your chakras, which balances your hormone system.
So
That's the correspondence of it.
Do each of the chakras have different meanings of what the energy does when it's from that chakra?
Yeah, they're associated with different things. The main thing is what's the way to describe it, is the seven are aligned along your spine. So 7 vortices of energy along your spine, and if you associate them with the endocrine system, then you've got sexual energy at the base. You've got energy about relationships, and human relationships is the next one up, which is like your belly. Solar plexus is about fight or flight in endocrine system terms. It's about duality. It's about moving forward or against. So attraction and repulsion, those types of things. Next one up is your heart, which is about compassion and community. The throat's obviously about communication, about speaking truth. And then you've got third eye is about seeing truth, seeing the unity of things. And the crown is like the complete whole. So at the base level, you've got a physical whole, and at the crown level, you've got a non-physical whole. I don't know exactly how to describe that, but it's like everything that exists in the universe is contained in those two, basically.
Okay. So if I want Reiki healing, what's the practice that I come to you, and how does it work?
Well, I work in a number of different ways. I work on a weekly basis with people over 5 or 6 months sometimes. The last guy, and he uses a case study here, is a guy who was a singer. He's a student, but he's being trained in being a vocalist, a folk singer, effectively. And he was wanting to increase his confidence, his stage presence, to increase the resonance of his voice. So instead of singing from the throat, to be singing with his whole body to some extent. And he also wanted to be moving up the biological hierarchy, to feel like he was top of the tree. That's what he wanted. He wanted the confidence of like the effortless confidence of somebody like Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra. And I took him through a process of like Reiki sessions twice a week for 4 or 5 months, helping through various things just as they were coming up. The way I do it is not traditional particularly, but the way I do it is a chakra balance session, but before that there's a conversation. So you might have 10 or 15 minutes just talking, and I use what comes up in the conversation to give me an idea of where to work in your energy field. And then we sit down and have another conversation, work out what's cleared and what's still there, what needs to move another 10 minutes to clear the remainder. So it's like working in the moment, working in here and now, just clearing what's there in the conversation, essentially. But if you do that often enough, you end up with less and less coming up in the conversation for healing, and you can start to do strategic things as well, because you're clearing the day-to-day kind of stress level.
So is this a hands?
Makes sense.
It does. Is there any hands-on involved in it? Do you physically manipulate people's chakras, or is it mostly verbal and getting into their mind to talk about the chakras?
Well, obviously the conversation's verbal, but the way that I work is off the body mostly. So I start just by opening up the heart, and then put my hands on their shoulders usually to begin. So always shoulders first, down the arms, and then just go anywhere else intuitively from there.
So you
but off the body, not on the body.
okay.
For me,
So you can feel the energy of the other person as the Reiki practitioner?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I can feel. Well, my hands move. My hands move intuitively to where the energy is flowing through my hands. So I'm just moving my hands around until they get stuck, essentially.
Okay, and so the energy that you sense from the person you're working on sort of guides your hands that there's more energy coming out there, and since it's not resonating at the frequency of the rest of the person's body, that's when you know to adjust the energy at that place?
That's pretty much the way it works. Yeah, I'll leave my hands there until they start to wiggle a little bit, and then I know that I'm pretty much done. And I just scan the energy field again. Just move my hand up and down until it stays in one place again.
Okay.
I keep doing that on the front of the body and the back of the body. And then when I feel like I've been in all seven places, I'll double check, and then we start the second conversation after that.
I see. I've never had Reiki done on me in my physical presence, but I've had Reiki practitioners supposedly trying Reiki on me from a distance. Would I feel anything happening when they're working at a distance?
It varies because it depends on the receptivity of the person you're sending it to some extent. I mean, with this guy that I've been talking about, he reported back to me. I did one distance healing session for him when we didn't have a room to do a physical session, and he reported back that it was about 10% of what he was getting when I was physically present in the room. So there is some variation, but also it depends how receptive you are. What I was asking him to do was to consciously open up to the energy, and if you open up consciously, then that's the signal that you're receptive. Whereas some people just sit quietly in meditation, and that's an indication of receptivity as well. But the conscious thing makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are pretty unconscious when it comes to their bodies, and that because they've never really taken possession of their own health, they've always assigned that work to their doctors or their mothers or somebody else in their life, that when they feel different energies, they just get uncomfortable and they don't realize that those energies can arrive from themselves by their thought patterns and actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you walk into a room and somebody's been arguing in the room. You can tell there's something been going on. You can feel it in your guts or however you feel it. With me, it's usually my gut.
Yeah, how did you get involved in doing Reiki in the first place? Can you give us a little history of how you found it and why you tried it and what sort of things you found from practicing it both early on and things that you know now?
Yeah, well, initially, as I said, I was looking for a way to de-stress from the job that I was doing, and it just happened that I lived about 200 yards away from two natural healing centres. So on the street around the corner from where I lived, there was a choice of two places to do Reiki stuff and Qigong and all those sorts of things. So I just signed up for a workshop essentially, but it was on my doorstep, which was interesting because I wasn't really expecting to be doing complementary health stuff. I fought against it for a while when somebody suggested it to me. So it took me a while to come round to the idea. And then for about 9 months, I did my first training. I did in April 1998, and for the next 9 months, I did another 2 trainings because there's three levels for the Reiki process that I'm in. It took 9 months before I actually started to feel the energy flow. So I was doing it all on trust, and with Reiki, it's a process of self-healing. So you're doing, at least the way that I talk about it, you're doing like daily self-healing, so you're working through things that are stressing you or getting you anxious or things you're reacting to. What I do is I sit down and I work out roughly where that's coming from in my past and send the Reiki back to me as a child or as a teenager or wherever it is, or it might even be yesterday, whatever the situation is. Reiki doesn't really need a time or space coordinate, so you can send it anywhere. You can send it to me when I was 5 if I want to. And if there's something that happened to me when I was 5 that I can't remember, but it's affecting me now, then that will help. That feedback loop kind of improves the way that I respond to something. If there's something stuck in my subconscious, I usually don't know what it is, but I can track down roughly where it's come from in my past on the timeline and just send Reiki back there.
So, in essence, you have a way of moving from the present to affect your past?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, I know with my childhood, there was one or two issues in my childhood along the way. So I've always looked. I used to look a lot further back than my childhood, but these days I just look at my childhood and teenage years and all that. So all the places where there's stressful, traumatic situations, or even just situations. I was a very sensitive kid, so every situation for me was potentially stressful.
Okay, so
I was sensitive.
I guess I can imagine that as a child, when you're sensitive and you're stressing out, and then all of a sudden this wave from the future of Reiki comes in, and suddenly you de-stress, or are you now going back to periods where you know you had stress and working out to overcome the stress during that time period from now to try and change the past?
It's a combination of the two. And what I'm really looking at is a feedback loop. So if anything comes up in the here and now, and I know there was something in my past, then that's when I would send the Reiki back. I'm not really all that worried about looking for things anymore because I went through a process of starting at my mother's pregnancy and working through 9 months of pregnancy and then 52 years of being alive. And I worked through most of those years, month by month. So I've cleared a lot of stuff along the way. So I know there's not that much there now. I mean, I do react to stuff and I do get angry with things now and again.
Okay. Bridgette, have you ever done Reiki before?
Hold on. Oh, hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I've been involved with just about every possible thing, but I always come back to shamanism. Shamanism is quicker and faster process.
Faster? I thought Reiki was an instantaneous process.
No, I mean, the thing is, like, shamanism, there's just practices in shamanism that are just a lot faster. You know, things like recapitulating. If done right, if the practice is done right.
That's a new term for me. Can you explain it?
Well, it's just kind of basically a process where you go in and you reclaim your power that you lost in whatever situation or event. And usually, people I studied with, the first thing that I ended up recapitulating was my whole sexual history, because my whole sexual history was keeping me from being able to finally heal the brain cancer. So once I recapitulated my sexual history, which I went back through it, I gained a whole bunch of power, basically, that I lost, so that my energetic systems had power in the generator in order to regenerate the body. And it kind of, a lot of it goes back to a lot of these people that I've talked about before who, native people, indigenous people who, around the globe who did, types of shamanism work. So native, Red Road native stuff is not the same as shamanism. So basically shamanism is a Russian term. So a lot of people who claim to be shamans sometimes aren't, because it comes from Russia. It comes from those, Mongolian Russia lineages. And then, in South America, you would have sorcerers. In, Africa, you may have had like voodoo or witch doctor kind of terms. And so, Tibetan Buddhists are very much, I consider them shamans for sure. And there are people in India who, can defy, our reality. So they're kind of all over, but there's they all have different kinds of practices. And the South American practices, a lot of them, they left this world in their body. They went into the timeline. And I know one, I don't know, I don't think you can really consider him not human anymore, but, the one that's 10,000 years old that, created his whole own world, adjacent to this world. It has streets and, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I just keep going back to shamanism practices because they just, some of these people who've done really well at them in the past, just erase they take their power back, erase their history, and then when their history is erased, then they can defy gravity, they can defy whatever else, and then choose a reality that they actually want to live. I know, like, if you go back to a lot of Lenny Andrews' books, the first original trilogy, she talks about a woman named, a native woman named, she may have been Aboriginal, actually. I don't know if Twin Dreams was really Aboriginal or not, I can't remember, but through the three trilogy books, she, Lynn Andrews is kind of not afraid of Twin Dreams, but Twin Dreams' power just kind of hair-raising. And that Twin Dreams would just show up anywhere because she'd just cross over, wherever they'd be camping and working on, medicine, which is energy, right? So that's the energy medicine. That's what people call it, but I just call it medicine. Working on that, and then all of a sudden Twin Dreams would just show up out of the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere where they were at.
I'm lost. Is Twin Dreams a person, or is Twin Dreams a concept, or you threw me? I'm not familiar with Twin. Okay.
Yeah, Twin Dreams is a person. So I just couldn't remember if in the book she was Aboriginal descent or not. So there's just a lot of native women, different from all over the globe, that came together, and Lynn Andrews worked with them all, and they traveled around. But I can't remember if Twin Dreams was Aboriginal or not. But she was claimed to be 2,000 years old in her physical body, and because she defies this reality. I mean, this reality doesn't define her, and it doesn't, control her. And then she travels through the timelines, the cracks in between, to the past, present, and future, and probably other planets and, whatever else. So the thing is, like, I just, I've lived in ashrams, I've studied with all kinds of different people and different aspects of things, but just for me personally, I always come back to the Red Road, the Native Road, as far as my ceremony work and stuff, and then I'm very big into shamanism. And like I said, it's not for everybody. It's pretty intense stuff, actually.
Yeah, I would suppose that Reiki is what would be considered the yellow road since it's from the Far East as a philosophy. Maybe we should explain to the listeners a little bit more about the red road, the yellow road, the blue road, and the white road. Can you do that for us?
Well, the thing is, like, I just don't really want to talk about that.
Well, we could switch topics.
I mean, yeah, because it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more complicated than that. But the red road is basically walking the native path, like the indigenous spiritual path. And different tribes have different practices. And mostly, the native road is about community, where it's a lot more about. I had Jules Reiki on last week, who is Seneca, who is trained traditional Lakota. She talked quite a bit about her place on the Red Road, so people could go listen to that. But the Red Road is about other people. It's about the planet. It's about the ceremonies. It's about the songs that are activation. All those things that. All the tools that Native uses are energy activation and energetically medicine tools and ceremonies, activate, energies to come forward and understandings to come forward. And the basics with most of the Native people and the spirituality, there's just a few basics. There's, the sweat lodge, and there's variations of the sweat lodge. And each tribe's a little bit different. They put their doorway in a different direction, which, has symbolic meaning for them. I mean, just because, they're Native American doesn't mean that they all across the board do the same thing. They might have the door of their sweat lodge in another direction, or my friend Bear has two doors, one on the front and one on the back. And I can't remember which way he faces his door, but I think we wanted to say east, the front door when you come in. And so those are all like symbolic things, because you set up like what basically in New Age thinking would be an energetic grid. So when they lay out the lodge, they lay out the medicine wheel, they lay out the directions, and they put the lodge on it. Before the lodge ever went on it, or the building structure, which is the womb of the earth, they set up what New Age people would consider an energetic grid with, sometimes flag symbolic stuff, or rocks, or different things that symbolize this is the east, walkway. This is the east walkway into the lodge. This is the south walkway into the lodge. This is the west walkway into the lodge. And this is the north walkway into the lodge. And then, so once they set up, the directions, which, like I said, is a grid, it's an energetic grid. A lot of them probably wouldn't call them that. I mean, Bobido, my last teacher, Shoshone medicine elder, unbelievable. This guy, he just was unbelievable. He died in June 2016, but he would have said it was an energetic grid, because he said that's what we're doing. So they have like a sweat lodge and kind of thing, how that's set up, and there's traditions based on the training of the person pouring the water in that lodge. So which direction that you walk in the gate from, and then which gate you walk out of. Like I said, there's four directions, so there's 4 gates, 4 walkways. One of my favorite things about the lodge is, when you come up to the door, you kneel down and pray all my relations. And then you stand up and you go around in a clockwise circle, looking at every direction, because you're looking at that life for the last time. Because once you go into the lodge, all that is cleaned away, and you come out new. You're birthed out new. So I always like that. I like the, taking one last look around at the world as it is before you go in. So some Native people, I've been to different kinds of fire ceremonies. Bobito did earth healing ceremonies, which required a fire pit, and he used a crystal grid as well, and he would go, for 16 years all over the United States. He went down to South America, did a bunch of work down there, and he would clean the original sin, all the energies that were laying on top of each other in layers until he could get down to the bottom, called the original sin. And in 2014, this is when Lenny and I really got to know each other really well, because I was crisscrossing the United States, and I was doing ceremonies with different people, and I was doing a lot of earth healing work as I was going. And I had done, out the gate before even that trip, I went up to Sandpoint, Idaho, and Coeur d'Alene to help Bobito do work up there, because there'd been so much like skinhead, Ku Klux Klan. There had been a lot of, in the past, like Waco kind of stuff, FBI and military stuff, take people down up in those areas. So there'd always been a lot of murder and violence. Plus, there were a lot of Native people who lived up there. So the original sin is when they were no longer living in peace and they were being slaughtered, and all that murder and violence and slaughter leaked into all the water, and it lays in the water. It becomes part of the water. So, so he would go and he would use these grids, or the fire and the crystal grid, and have people come and help him do the work of clearing all those kinds of energies, because it's pretty intense to try to clear that stuff by yourself. It could make you sick, and in some cases it could kill you. So you always want to have those kinds of ceremonies with other people, so that the stuff gets cleared through multiple avenues and not just one. But yeah, so Bobito was pretty amazing guy. He taught me a lot of stuff. So his tools, he had a eagle wing, a golden eagle wing, and he used to use it. It reminded me kind of like a Thor, like the mythical stuff with Thor and his axe. It was like a energetic sword. His wing, the tip of it, he would use it to, kind of cut into people and pull out energy and fling it into the universe, or wherever he would fling it. And he'd use the wing to clear people and the energies on the person. And the wing also helps to imprint people with the eagle medicine, which is, kind of like, eagle would be one of the birds that would fly highest, to the ancestors, near the ancestors. So they're closer to the messages, like kind of the different worlds, above us.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that as a chemist, my understanding of energy has to do more in the physical energy of matter. And in talking about different energies that come about through different healing modalities and different other modalities, I'm not quite certain how action at a distance works, but it seems to me that the way that energy is sensed is almost different from the traditional sense of most Americans have.
Well, you have to realize that Native people have they have less reptilian, right? They have less reptilian DNA, and so they live they're born and they live and reside in their right hemisphere, where whites pretty much live and reside in their left hemisphere, because we have more reptilian DNA, because, you know, we were manufactured, you know, after the brown people were here, you know, and the brown people. So the story that I'm told from my teacher, one of my teachers, who's was a Paiute elder. I think he is a Paiute elder, and he's traveled all over and studied with many tribes. Unfortunately, he brought a lot of those teachings back, and his people didn't really want to accept it. So he travels more. He was doing a lot of different kinds of water wheel medicine wheels to heal water worldwide, that a grandmother came out of the lake and asked him to do. But I don't think he's doing a lot of work right now. But one of the things, and I might not get the story completely right, but so the story goes back to, well, like before Earth was created as a library for all worlds, all dimensions, and all planets. But it goes back before that. And so he said that the seven, you know, the reason why seven is really important to most indigenous people worldwide is because seven, you know, there were 7 nations that first came to Earth. So then what he's saying in nations is he's saying a particular being, vibration, you know, a group of these beings, or a vibration, a grouping of a vibration that came here. And so when the planet was still first, before it became a planet and a circular sphere or a hoop or a medicine wheel, I mean, this is the way that they look at it, right? That the Earth is, you know, is the medicine wheel, right? With all the directions, and 7 directions, mostly 4 directions, but there's 7 directions as well. And so I forget how it goes in the, you know, he didn't test me on this.
Well, I could see 4 directions as northwest, east, and south, and then 2 directions as up and down. But what's the 7?